Well, hello everyone. Not the return I was hoping for, but the best I could do today. I am doing well. Do not worry. But I could not be there today. I do not want to make anyone sick. Okay? So, you should have this lesson in front of you, and let's pretend it's as if I'm there right now. So, headphones out, please, and pay attention. You should have this worksheet in front of you, and it's designed specifically to do a bunch of things at once, to review the things you have seen and to teach you about something new, which is actually a skill that I hope you remember that I taught you. So mixing a bunch of stuff together into what I hope is an okay lesson for you. I tried not to make it too long. So some review. What is the slope and y-intercept for each line? So there's two different lines there, and we really need to get to the point. And if you're not quite there yet, if you still have to look at that first line and go, which one's the slope, which one's the y-intercept, that's okay, but we're going to have to make some progress very, very soon. And here's the progress I suggest. Make a little study page, and you'll see it written like this all the time, y equals mx plus b. And you just make a note to yourself. That looks very mysterious, but all we're saying is when you get an equation of a line, the number that's in front of the x will be the slope, and the number that's not by the x will be the y-intercept. We had other names for this, though. The slope, what was the other name for the slope? But think about it for a second. Maybe you're shouting out the answers in class. That would make me laugh. But the other name for slope was rate, and it really depended on how the question came up, whether we called it rate or slope. And the y-intercept, the other name we had for that, what was the other name for y-intercept? I hope you're shouting out answers, because that would be fun to me to find out from your supply that you're shouting that out. That's the start value. I heard I'm supposed to bring treats too, so I'll work on that. I have not yet gone into a store yet, so we'll see what happens there. Okay, so that's the piece of information you're supposed to have been picking up along the way, is that from these equations, if you know how to get the information, you can get the information pretty quickly. This first one's y equals negative 3x plus 1, so the slope is negative 3. And I'm starting to use that m letter more for slope. And I hope you're getting used to using M as the representative letter for slope, and it's because it comes from the French. Monter, M-O-N-T-E-R, for to go up by is Y, and the original, the best early textbook on this stuff was written by a Frenchman, so he got to use his letter as his language to name slope. Then B is the y-intercept. That's a 1. Get those right from the equation. So then on your grid, what you're supposed to be able to do then is to go, okay, that B, that y-intercept is the start value, and by start value we mean the y-intercept, and I'll switch to red here just so you can see it a little better, and that goes on the y-axis at 1. There it is. I'm going to try and dot that in pretty good. Then slope negative 3. Now, negative 3 doesn't have a denominator. To get slope, okay, so here on the side here, more study material. If you're writing this down, you're like, okay, Mr. Todd says it's time for me to really know this stuff. Here's the study material over here. Slope is easy and fun. Just remember rise over run. But I remember that people were getting better at remembering slope was rise over run. Okay, so this one doesn't have a denominator. This slope was negative 3. And what can we put it over so that it becomes a fraction that I can use? That is, what can negative 3 be over that doesn't change its value? 1. 1 is the answer there, I hope. Again, I'm imagining here, I'm sitting here at home imagining you're shouting out the answers. So the rise here is negative 3. I want to switch back to red here. Rise is negative 3, run is 1. So I'm rising negative 3, 1, 2, 3, run 1. There's another point. Rise negative 3, run 1. Now, I go right off the page because I sort of have fun with this as I'm going along there. You don't need that many, especially if you have a ruler. And I have rulers up on the shelf there if you know where they are. You can get the teacher to pause the video and go over and get a ruler if you want. Don't go crazy with them. Just get it done and get back to your seats. I'll keep going here. Rise -3, run 1, and that should be enough. Now, if you got your ruler, fine. If you just got another pencil you're going to use, that's fine. Mine has a ruler on here. I've never used it before. Let's see how good I am with it. This brings up a ruler on the page, and I got to use, you can't see what I'm doing here. I got to move it around with my fingers. Let's see how well this works here. Oh, not bad. That works a lot better than I thought it was going to. This is similar to what you're doing on your page. And then I think it allows me to, whoa. That's actually pretty impressive. I like that a lot. I think I'm going to need that again in a second. No, I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to turn it off, and I'll turn it on again later. Wow, that was pretty good. Now, technically, we should put the arrows on the ends like that. Okay. All right, here's another one. This one's actually easier because the fraction's given. It's got a lot less thinking on it. So take a second. See what you can do. I'll pause. Like, you don't have to pause the video. I'll actually pause in the video here. Take a second and see if you can find the y-intercept. Find the slope, which means the rise or run, and then draw the line. I'm going to switch colors. Let's see if green shows up on the screen here pretty good. I'm pausing on purpose. So you can try and say, okay, how am I doing with this stuff in this weird chapter where Mr. Todd's been away for some of it, but I've been doing my best to send along the stuff you need, and got you an extra teacher there that one day. Shh, I'm pausing. Shh, pause. Okay, so y-intercept was the number not with the x, so that's -3. And then the slope is 3/4. So slope y-intercept -3. And then rise 3, run 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Rise 3, run 4. And then I get out my ruler. This is actually sort of fun. I was worried this wasn't going to work too well on here, but I think it works even better than my actor board when I'm there live. Oops. It disappeared on me. There must be a fancy way to make it disappear, because I was able to make it disappear there. And then straight line right through there. And technically, now how did I turn that off? I don't even know. All right, so turn that off now. Goodbye. Clean that up. A random mess over there. Okay. And then technically we're supposed to put arrows on the end of it. Again, I'm not going to take marks off your test if you don't, but that's technically what we're supposed to do, because the line could keep going off the page if you wanted to. All right, I hope that's good. I hope you're like, okay, I'm starting to get good at that. That I can do. And if you are, don't think that's a simple thing. Don't think that's like, oh, no big deal. I can graph lines. It is a big deal. It's a really big deal for us to be able to graph those lines. Okay. All right. Whoops. I don't need to wait, do I? No, you've got this in front of you, so I just got to get rid of that mess I just made there, and then I got to move this up. Okay, now here's the problem for the day. Maybe you're bored with that. Maybe you're like, I've done a zillion of those. You sent us all sorts of work. I'm really good at that. Why are you still on about that? And it's because of this big moment here. Let's take a look at another 2 sets of equations, and I'm going to tell you these are also equations of lines, but they look different. They look very different. And what do you notice is different about these equations when you compare them to the equations in number 1? Because the idea now is you're supposed to be the point where it's like, okay, if you give the equations to me that look like these ones, and let's see, can I zoom right in? Look like that one and that one. That life, while not easy, there's a set of steps here. You get the y-intercept, the slope, rise, run, off you go. What is it about these ones that's different? I'll let you stare at them for a second. Let me see if I can get them all on the screen there. There I go. What is different? I mean, there's a lot of different things, but there's one key difference in how these equations are set up. All right, maybe you give all sorts of answers to that, and there might be some other right answers about how they're different, but the big thing is they don't look like y equals. Yeah? Now, I could have wrote y equals mx plus b, and I think some teachers would. They would say, it doesn't look like y equals mx plus b, but I'm going to get my highlighter out here, and I suggest you circle these things and go, wait a minute, there's a problem here. That shouldn't be, oop, that wasn't my highlighter. Here, let me get the highlighter. Highlighter. That shouldn't be over there. That and that shouldn't be over there. Maybe even that -4 shouldn't be over there. But we'll talk about that in a minute. We want y equals, all right? So I'm trying to convince you by that review. If you're wondering, well, why are you reviewing this again? I want to go, because I really want to make the point here that if it's y equals, we've got a set of steps. These ones aren't y equals. All right, important point. Important point. Oh, it's in a separate box here. So hopefully that makes you really pay attention to what's going to be in the box here. Again, I'm having trouble with the screen here. Important point. To graph, we want the equation in y equals, yeah, see, that's a good way to remember it, actually, in y equals form. In class, I'll say that like that all the time. I'll say, oh, put it in y equals form. But really, it means y equals mx plus b form, which means it looks like those equations we saw before, where everything was on the right-hand side except the y. All right, that's important. Why that's so important, I'm going to get out the red highlighter there and highlight that. Geez, I wish that was a bigger. Can I make that bigger? Oh, I'm scared to make it bigger because I don't know if I'll make it smaller again. Highlighter. Oh, no, that's other things. Anyways, so I'll go again. I'll be like, oh, really highlight that. Maybe instead of highlighting it, maybe you don't have a highlighter. Maybe just put a big star out there, going, "Hey, this is big. This is the big moment of the lesson here." Okay. Into y equals mx plus b form. Oh, I didn't put that word in there. To graph, we want the equation in y equals mx plus b form is the word that finishes that sentence. I got so distracted by my highlighting, I forgot to put that there. All right. Make sure you copy that sentence down. Then, whammo, the next question says, okay, take these equations and put into y equals mx plus b form. So here's the two equations that we just saw up there, 3x plus y minus 1 equals 0. These are the exact same equations. It says, put them into y equals mx plus b form. And this is the essential part of the lesson. So if you've been distracted or you've been looking around or you're mad because I'm not there again or any of those things, just put those aside for a second because I really want to talk about how we get them into y equals mx plus b form. So what I'm going to do is, it looks like I'm going to cheat, actually. I'm going to go down and I'm going to say, okay, my last line is going to look like this. Y equals. And I wrote the equals right directly underneath that other equals. That's what I want. And it's okay if you're mad. When I give you an equation that looks like 3x plus y minus 1 equals 0, you're like, Mr. Todd, why? Why? That's a funny joke, right? Why? How come? Why is it that you're torturing us by not having y equals? So then you say to yourself, okay, do I know how to move things across? And I'm going to do them one at a time to talk about how to move each of these things across. So for instance, that -1, I don't want it on this side, on the left side, I want it on the right side. And do you remember how this goes? If I want to move it over to the right side, instead of it being subtract 1, it becomes plus 1. And if you've seen this before in grade 9, technically what we're doing is we're adding 1 to both sides. And that gets rid of the -1 on the left side. But we can think about the way we did last chapter, is we say, okay, -1 becomes +1. So now this is good. 3x plus y equals 1. Happy. I'm happy. I'm happier than I was. Little smiley face there. Because it's looking more like y equals mx plus b form. The next thing I got to move over is 3x. But the same thing happens with 3x. It's a positive 3x right now because it doesn't have a negative in front. And when I move it over, it becomes -3x. Now, I wrote it first. That might bother you. Maybe you think I should have wrote it second. But I really wanted it in y equals mx plus b form, so I decided to put the one with the x first. It wouldn't be wrong to write 1 minus 3x. That's not incorrect. It's a little easier to look at, I think, when you put the x term first. And for those of you who've seen this before in grade 9 and sort of remember it, let's just remind ourselves that you don't have to write this, but technically all I'm doing is subtracting 3x from both sides. That's what I'm really doing there. But I like the way I've been teaching it so far. Well, okay. After seeing that, I'm going to jump ahead to question 6. It says, now state the slope and y-intercept, and now I can see it quite easily. The slope is -3, and the y-intercept is 1. See? So that's what today's lesson is. Move it over to get y equals mx plus b form. Now, before you decide that's super easy, I'll do a harder one. And I won't explain why this one's harder exactly. We'll just let it develop so you can see what's happening. All right, here's my plan. I look at this and I want it in y equals mx plus b form. So I write down what I want the last line to look at so I can think about it. I want it to be y equals. That's what I really want to happen. First, what has to be moved first? That -12. That subtract 12 that's at the end has to be moved over. So what happens to it? I'm going to go 3x minus 4y. And what happens to the subtract 12 when it moves over? And I'll pause for you to shout out answers. When it moves over, instead of subtract 12, now it becomes add 12. I hope somebody had the nerve, maybe all of you, knew that becomes add 12. Now it's really 0 plus 12, but that's just add 12. I'll write positive 12 there, but you could just write 12. Next, the 3x has to move over. And what does 3x become when it moves over? You think about it. If it's positive 3x on the left, when it comes over to the right, it's going to be negative 3x. I could write it second. I chose not to. Because I wanted the x to be first. All right. So far, that seems exactly like the first question. Seems like 5a. But this is much more difficult because it's got a -4 out in front of the y. So stick right with me here. It's right now multiplying by -4 on the left. What's the opposite of multiplying by -4? Dividing by -4. So I'm going to write this, but something awkward happens. It's now -3x plus 12 all over -4, which doesn't look like y equals mx plus b form. So this is hard. This is very difficult to look at this and try and convert it over. So I'm going to say this sentence twice, give you 2 shots at listening to what I'm going to say. Each of these terms has to be divided by -4. That's what divide by -4 over there means. Divide each term by -4. So this first term, -3x, it has to be divided by -4. And this 12 has to be divided by -4. I need a little more space here. So the first term, the negatives cancel, and I get 3/4 x. And 12 divided by -4, a positive divided by a negative is negative, and I get -3. That's hard, but once I've done that, then I can see that the slope is 3/4. I'm going to write it under here. So on mine, it won't fit in there. Maybe yours it'll fit. And then the y-intercept is -3. Okay, so I would call that 5a. I would call that an easy one. 5b, I would call that a hard one. Now, when you run into easy and hard ones when you're starting to do these practice, then look back at those two and go back and say, okay, let me look at what Mr. Todd did on those. And I'll post this video on your D2L page too, if you ever want to go back and watch it. But for now, you have a copy down, and you can just look back at those examples when you're trying to do easy and tough ones as we go along. All right. Easy. I think 5A is not bad. Not bad, sort of livable. But 5B, that is a tough question. So let's just look ahead at what we have to accomplish here. Practice. I'm going to do 5 more of those. Yes? Not fast, not slow. We'll just cruise through them. Sorry, I can't even count. That's a good sign when your math teacher can't even count. I've got to do 4 more of those, A, B, C, D. Then you'll get a chance. The rest of the period, you'll get to try and do a bunch of them. There's 9 for you to do. And then, as a bonus at the end, I'm like, okay, but let's just go back and make sure you know how to graph lines like we did at the start of the lesson. Because remember, I said that I think that's a really important skill. But more about that later. Okay, for now, 4 more of those. All right, here we go. 2x plus y minus 4. We wanted to get it into y equals mx plus b form. So I'm going to do it in 2 steps. The negative 4, or the subtract 4, has to move over. What does subtract 4 become as it moves over to the right side? It becomes positive 4. Okay? So I would call this a lot like 5a we were just doing. Then whatever the number is, you move it over, and it changes. If it was subtract, it changes over to add. Then the 2x has to get moved over. So y equals, I move the 2x over. I could write it second. Yeah, and I'll do that here now. That's what I'll do. I'll go 4 subtract 2x, because 2x, when it moves over, becomes subtract 2x. But you see how that doesn't look like y equals mx plus b. And so I just change the order around. So that means the same thing, as long as you keep the sign in front. And then, hopefully, then now we're getting to the point where it's like, okay, the slope is the 1 with the x. The intercept, or the start value, is the 1 by itself. That's the 4. Now, I did that one fairly fast. I'm going to slow this one down. In case that one was way too fast. You're like, yo, easy now, Mr. Todd. I know you're trying to scramble through your video here, but I didn't quite follow all that. So a little slower this time, a little slower. 7b, 4x plus 2y plus 6 equals 0. I like going after the number first. So the number is add 6. It's got to get moved over to the other side. When it moves over to the other side, it's got to switch to its opposite. And what's the opposite of adding 6? Subtracting 6. So I move that over. I get 4x plus 2y equals, well, it's 0 minus 6, but 0 minus 6 is just negative 6. Then I go after the x term. I go, okay, I got to move the x term over. It's currently a positive 4x because there's no negative 4 in front of it. So it must be positive. So when I move it over, it becomes negative 4x. And save yourself a little step here. Say, oh, I know I want that x term first anyways, so I'll write it first. All right, this one is it's sort of a medium one. It still has a number up front. It's not y equals yet. It's 2y equals. So I got to get that 2 out of there. And what's the opposite of multiplying by 2? And that's divide by 2. But this is just a little difficult because each term over there has to get divided by the 2. And so when I divide them both by 2, I get negative 2x minus 3. See? Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And then negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Now I've got the slope and the y-intercept. Negative 2, negative 3. Whew. Okay. That's medium. That would be a medium one. But again, they're there for you to look at. So when you get to your homework ones and you're like, I forget. Do I do this? Do I do that? How do I handle that? Look back at these because I'm giving you all sorts of examples here. All right. Trying to stay slow here. I'm not rushing it. Next one. X minus y minus 5 equals 0. I like going after the number first. So it's subtract 5 on the left. When I move it over, it becomes add 5. Or just positive 5. Then I got to move the x. It's positive x on the left. So when I move it over, it becomes subtract x or negative x. Save yourself a little work and write it first. Now, woo. Little curveball here, little tricky one here. It's got a negative on there. And I'm going to explain it an easier way in just a minute. But one thing you can do, totally allowed, you can just reverse the signs all the way through. If that makes sense to you, then you can just do that and write that sentence. I'll just write it down here. Then you would just write y equals x minus 5, just like that. If that makes sense to you, okay? If that doesn't make sense to you, here, watch this. What's technically happening is that negative is actually means negative 1y. And so what I've got to do is the opposite of multiplying by negative 1 would be divide by negative 1. And then when I divide each of those by negative 1, I get that final answer that would have given me the same if I just had reversed all the signs. That's why we're allowed to reverse all the signs, because you're just dividing everything by negative 1. But that's one little tricky one that can come up from time to time. So I see the y-intercept's negative 5, but now, hold on. Then what's the slope? There's nothing out there. Is there something out there? Is there not something out there? Lots of people would say 0 here for the slope, but the slope isn't 0. What number do we understand is in front of x if we don't write a number there? The answer is 1. There's 1x. If it was 0x, we just wouldn't even write the x. So there has to be 1x here. Excuse me, my voice has just about had enough. How much more do I have to do? I got to do that, and then we're going to graph those 4, and then I guess I'm done. Okay, so that's about the most my voice can handle today, which is one of the reasons why I couldn't be there. I couldn't do this live 3 times. I had to make videos tonight. Okay. All right, one more time. Very slow this time, just in case that was too fast. I feel like it might have been too fast. We'd like to get this down to y equals mx plus b, which means it'll only have y on the left-hand side. To do that, everything that's not a y has to move over. I like going after the numbers first. And I look and I go, there's a number, negative 8. It's actually technically called a constant, but that's okay. We can just call it the number for now. And the number of subtract 8 has to move over, or negative 8 has to move over. And when it moves over, what does it become? You think about it for a second. If it's subtract 8 on the left side, what's it when it moves over to the right side? It becomes add 8 or positive 8, like that. Next, the x term has to move over. And this x term is 3x, which is, like positive 3x. So when it moves over, it has to become subtract 3x. And again, you can write it second like that. And then maybe after a moment you go, whoa, hang on, why am I doing that? Write that first. Maybe you like that extra step there. You go, okay, we like having the x term first. Finally, it's the y is not by itself yet. It says 2y. So I want to get rid of that 2 there. Right now, y is being multiplied by 2. What's the opposite of multiplying by 2? And the answer is divide by 2. So I divide all those by 2. And when I say divide by 2, I mean divide each term by 2. So the x term becomes negative 3 divided by 2. And the constant term, or the number, becomes 8 divided by 2, which is 4. I just divided each one of those. And I'm going to write these underneath. Maybe you got room on your sheet to write them in the spot, but it goes right there. 4 and negative 3/2. So I did what it said. It said isolate the y. So that's another way to say what I'm doing here is isolate the y. State the slope of y-intercept. I did that. And then it says, graph them all. Okay, so a quick graphing practice. We're going to do 4 more of these because in your homework down here, that's what you end up with is a bunch of graphing questions. And I've given you a bunch of grids down there for that graphing, okay? All right, here we go. I'm going to do the first one really fast. And not because I want to rush through the video, and not because I'm showing off, but because I want to show you that once you get good at these, this can happen very, very quickly. So, first one has y-intercept 4. Boom, put that on. And it has slope negative 2, which I'm going to put over 1. So it's down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. I go right off the page to make sure I can draw it really straight. Maybe because I'm always doing it electronically when I'm teaching in classes. But this ruler, as I said, was actually pretty easy to use. Just hitching on me a little bit there. Right about there. How did I do? No, not quite. Look, it shows the angle on there too. Isn't that going to be cool to use when we go to do angles later? And then I'm going to turn that ruler off. Now, I did that a little fast on purpose. If you're annoyed that I went so fast, I understand that. I really do. I'm only doing that so that people see that this doesn't have to take forever. I'm noticing something disappeared, though. Look over on the right-hand side here. Stop what you're doing for a second. Look over here. Didn't I write -3/2 over there before? Maybe I erased it by accident. So that was what that slope was. There's all sorts of other junk on there. Anyways. All right. 3 more to go. Slower this time, Mr. Todd. Don't rush it. Okay. Next one. Y-intercept -3. I'm looking on the second one here. Y-intercept -3. And I'll do this one. How many colors do I have? Ooh, I'll do this one in blue. All right. Fun. Y-intercept -3. And so what we mean by that is that that's the start value. It's where you start on the y-axis. So I go down to -3. There's going to be the start value. The slope is -2. What do we do when it's a number like that? When it's not a fraction like we like to see, what do we do with the -2? Is someone shouting it out for everybody? Put it over 1. So now the rise is -2 and the run is 1. So rise -2, run 1. Rise -2, run 1. Rise -2, run 1. Very good. And then, I get to get my fancy ruler out. Put it just there like that. Geez, I'm having fun with that. Now, hold on a second here. Look at those 2 lines. We get another lesson in here from this chapter. Those 2 had the same slope. What are those called? What are those called when they have the same slope? Did you yell it out? Isn't that fun? If you did? Or are you just sitting there quietly? 2 lines, side by side, go on the same slope. What are they called? Parallel. Parallel. That was the other lesson we did this chapter. 2 more to go. Am I going to run out of colors? No, I don't think I am. I can do green and then red. I don't know if yellow would show up very good. Green. Y-intercept -5. Right there. Slope 1 over 1. Rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run 1. Rise 1, run 1. There it goes. I'm going to go right off the page there just because it's fun to do. Get out my ruler. And again, I did that one fast on purpose. I'm trying to show you, hey, we can zip through this. Maybe somebody already found that out. Mr. Todd gives you a homework sheet with a whole bunch of graphing lines, and you're like, I'm going to be done this in 2 seconds. And then pretending I'm not playing on my phone when I'm actually playing on my phone. There you go. There's that one there. Not quite perpendicular. You might have thought it was going to be perpendicular, but it wasn't quite. It's a little off there. Miss Todd, that was too fast. Slow it down. I'm not good at this yet. Oh, okay. Miss Todd slows it down for the last one. Y-intercept 4. So I go on the y-axis up to 4, right there. And then the slope is -3 over 2. So that's rise and run. So I rise -3. 1, 2, 3, run 2. There's another point. Rise -3, 1, 2, 3, run 2. Please don't underestimate how good a skill it is, how important it is to be able to just graph these lines. Graphing lines, so important. There, I got my red line. There we go. Bingo. Geez, that goes well. All right, and then I'll get the arrows on the end there. Folks, we really should label these lines. When you get this many lines on here, you should label them. So the first one I did was red, right? No, the first one I did was black. So I'll label that down there. That was A. The second one I did was blue. So I better switch to blue. And I'll label that as well. That was B. B, like that. And the third one I did was, which one was it? It was green. Okay, so green. So that's the C. And then the last one I did in red, that was the D. Maybe you want to label them as you go, so you don't have to try and figure it out afterwards which one was which. That's a good idea. Did I give you enough graph paper? Here, let's take a look. Here's your task today. Do those rearranging. There's 9 of those to do. Some are easy, some are hard, but they all sort of look like the ones I did up above. So you look back at the above ones to get some help on those. Yes, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 examples. You get to try these 9, okay? Come on, page. Oh, my page is being stubborn there. There it goes. And it says show all your steps. Well, it's not many steps. Move the number, move the letter, divide. Yeah, those are the 3 steps, basically. And then back to some practice of some y equals mx plus b to make sure we got that down pat. I think there's a couple of tricky ones. Let me just underline them so you can watch out for them. Maybe this is a little tricky. I talked about that today, though. Maybe this is a little tricky. And, well, I don't know if this is tricky or not, but it's a little different, but I talked about it today as well. Okay, please use your time in class. My voice is coming back. I'm feeling better. I feel like I'm less likely to make people sick now. So, good. I'm going to try to be back tomorrow, okay? But do your best to try and get through this. I want to look over the sheets when I get back, so see what you can get done with your time, okay? Let's not make a bathroom train, yes? If you don't have to go, just sit down and get some work done first. All right, have a great day. I'll see you very soon. I miss you. Bye.